Following robust debate among members of both the government and the opposition benches, the Amenities for Tourists Amendment Bill 2025 was passed in the Nevis Island Assembly on March 6. The bill was introduced by Premier of Nevis, Mark Brantley, who is also the Minister of Finance and Tourism in the Nevis Island Administration. The amendment to the Amenities for Tourists Ordinance affects an increase in the Tourism Development Levy, TDL, from 2% to 3%. According to Premier Brantley, the tax is consumer-based and is applied to the proceeds from hotel and guest house accommodations, as well as the sale of goods and beverages at hotels and restaurants registered under the TDL.
I want to be very clear, Madam President, that we have not just come into the House to announce an increase in the Tourism Development Levy. This has come about because it was announced in our budget of last year that we intended in this fiscal year to put that increase in place. And I wish to make it clear that that increase we intend to go into effect as of June of this year. So it is not intended to be immediate. We want stakeholders to have an opportunity to adjust what they need to adjust. As I mentioned stakeholders, let me also point out to the House that we had consultations with the hotel sector. We had consultations with the restaurant sector. We had those consultations prior to our budget debates of last year. And what we had those consultations to do was to engage with them, to get their feedback on this proposed increase, but also for them to understand the work that we were undertaking at the Nevis Tourism Authority and why we felt that an increase was warranted at this point in time. Madam President, it was as a result of that consultation, and if I can sum up the position of stakeholders, it was that they did not mind the increase, but they were concerned as to when it would be put in place, because some of them raised the very sensible argument that they did work with tour operators and had already locked in business, and that business would only have reflected the 2%. And that is why we have decided that rather than impacting this tourism season, we will implement as of June with the expectation that it would impact our upcoming tourism season.
However, opposition members of the Nevis Island Assembly did not favor an increase in the tax. Independent member Cleone Stapleton Simmons said the increase would burden small businesses already trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Consideration perhaps might have been made, or perhaps could have been made, or ought to have been made towards taking revenue from other mechanism, from other sources, Madam President. And that is perhaps the 10% tax that is already being collected, perhaps from the sharing agreement that we have with the federal government. Madam President, to bring an increase at this time when most hotels, restaurants are trying their best to recuperate and to bridge that gap from the losses that they suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic, when they are trying their best to really just breathe. Madam President, is it really the most prudent time to really put an additional burden on our small hotels and restaurants with this increase in taxation?
Leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, the NRP, Janice Daniel Hodge, said she was not in favor of an increase in the tax and that the Nevis Island administration should find more creative ways to raise the funds it needs to promote tourism.
The member presenting the bill would have said that he had stakeholder consultations. Madam President, I had stakeholder consultations as well, and I know the small businesses, the small restaurants, especially when it comes to the cost of doing business, the high cost of electricity, and now with an additional cost of salaries. Madam President, I feel that the government should be more creative and find more innovative ways. This bill was created in 1994. We're in 2025. We need new progressive type ordinances to take Nevis in a new direction, not struggling the people with the continued taxation, which seems to be the only means that the government can generate revenue. Thank you, Madam President.
Premier Brantley had previously announced the pending increase during his budget presentation in December 2024. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.